You are listening to Let's Talk Trio on podcasts. Keep up with the latest episodes by downloading the Podbean app or stream episodes via our social media accounts. Search for Let's Talk Trio on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. This episode is sponsored by Student Access. Student Access, the leader in Trio software. Student Access is an online database solution that allows Trio programs to track their students' information, connect with students by text messages, streamline the APR, and work from anywhere, all online, with automatic updates for changes from the Department of Education. Their technical support team includes former Trio staff and has over 50 years of combined experience working with Trio. Make it easier to focus on your priority, the students. For more information and to request a free demo, visit their website at www.studentaccess.com or call them toll-free at 1-800-801-1232. That website again is www.studentaccess.com or 1-800-801-1232. Be sure to share your favorite episodes on your social media by tapping that share button. This is a great way to support the podcast. Now here's your host, Juan Rivas.
Thank you, Amelia, for that wonderful introduction. Hello, listener, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Trio. I am your host, Juan Rivas. In today's episode, we have Horacio Aceves, who is the Assistant Director for Trio Upward Bound at Occidental College, also known as Oxy. Horacio is on the podcast to talk about his own personal journey, his educational journey, experience in college, and why he decided to serve the Trio Upward Bound program. So coming up in just a bit, Horacio Aceves. A huge thanks to our sponsors, Angelica Villalpando, Rosario Riley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Dr. Jamie Motley, Angelica Valdez, Felicia Rivera, Jaded Electronics, TrioJoblist.com, NOSOTROS Education Center, and Student Access. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can be a sponsor of the podcast. Head on over to Patreon and search for Let's Talk Trio. Choose one of 4 patron levels. You can support this podcast for as little as $1 a month. $1 a month goes a long way in supporting this podcast. If you own a business and would like to run an ad on our podcast, send us a message at letstalktrio@gmail.com. Become a supporter with a one-time donation to the podcast PayPal account. Our handle is @LetsTalkTrio. That handle one more time is @LetsTalkTrio. Any amount is truly appreciated. If you would like to nominate a participant, staff, alumni, or advocate to be on the podcast, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. Again, a great episode featuring our guest, Horacio Aceves from the Trio Upward Bound program at Occidental College. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hi, Trio Nation. My guest on the Let's Talk Trio podcast is an alum of the Trio Upward Bound program at Occidental College. He earned his bachelor's degree in Diplomacy and World Affairs from Occidental College, also known as Oxy, and he earned his Master's of Science in Leadership and Management from the University of Laverne. He worked for Partners in School Innovation and America program in San Jose, California, and is now serving as the Associate Director for Trio Upward Bound at Oxy. In addition, he is the Public Relations Chair for the West Op region. In his free time, our guest enjoys attending LA Dodgers and LA Kings games, traveling, hanging out with coworkers and friends, cooking at home, which I'm going to ask him, which is one of his favorite recipes, and taking it easy on the weekends. Welcome to the podcast, Horacio Aceves. Horacio, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Juan, and everybody at your team there in the state of Colorado.
How are things in California?
Things are good in California. I don't think summer has left us because this back week has been super. I'm gonna say super hot because it's almost the end of October and it's still in the low 90s in the city. Okay. So maybe for some of our Trio colleagues out in the Inland Empire where it's more dry and it's more desert, it's probably like 100 degrees for them right now.
Whoa, okay. You know, I do miss the California weather from time to time, but you telling me that it's still in the 90s, like I'm like, okay, I'm glad I'm in Colorado. But I don't know if I shared this with you originally. I am originally from Los Angeles, California.
Hmm.
I was born there, and then my family decided to move us around a bit. But I think that the only critique I get from California is that the traffic is bad. Um, but that could be anywhere in the country. Denver and the I-25 is just as awful. But yeah, just know California is usually on my mind.
The traffic has not gotten any better. Probably
No.
it's you see traffic 7 days a week
Uh-huh.
after the Dodger game, before the Dodger games,
Oh
or
my,
any other
imagine.
before or after any sports games. And you should just expect traffic. So always leave
Yeah,
15 minutes early if you got to be somewhere on time.
absolutely. That's a good piece of advice. Have you ever been to Colorado?
Fun joke. I have been to Denver twice. Once only at the airport because I was on a layover.
Okay.
And the second time, I actually got my the first leg of my flight took it over an hour to leave because of they had to manually count like the suitcases that were
Oh.
going under the plane. And so
Uh-huh.
I missed my connection in Denver. And I was flying to
Oh.
Burbank Airport and I missed the last flight to Burbank. So I got stuck in Denver for the night. And
Oh.
because it was the airline's fault,
Uh-huh.
it was really easy to, oh, here's click on the link, pick your hotel.
Yeah.
Here's some vouchers so you can eat at the hotel. And I spent the night at it was like at a Hyatt, not
Mm-hmm.
too far from Denver Airport. So it was during your snow season, so the freeway was covered in snow.
Oh my
You
gosh, you got here
know,
snow season.
I I was at a hotel where
Uh-huh.
there was I think it's the light rail that y'all have that goes to the
Hmm.
airport.
I think
So
so. Yeah, yeah.
I could see the light rail from the back of my hotel,
Uh-huh.
and it was pretty. I mean, I didn't get to actually enjoy Denver, but
Mm.
I can say that I at least left the Denver airport.
Okay. So you enjoyed parts of Denver, which is still great. Did you get to see our infamous Lucifer, our horse that greets our airport arrivals and departures at the airport?
I don't remember seeing a horse.
It's like a horse statue, and like it has like so the designer was like, I don't know what they were thinking, but they had a horse statue up with with an eye that glows red. That's what I've been told. I'm like, I've seen the horse a couple times,
um
but
I must have missed it.
right. So you said earlier you would love attending Dodgers games, LA Kings games. You love traveling. How did all that come for you? How did you develop an interest in? Let's talk about the Dodgers. Like, yeah, how did you become a Dodgers fan?
I would say I've been going to Dodger games. This was for me. It's one. I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, and so I think it's also it's part of your I think Latino upbringing sometimes in Los
Yeah.
Angeles,
Hmm.
where if your family has the resources to take you to a Dodger game, then it's possible.
Right.
Because I mean, again, I'm 40, I'm going on 43. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
Dodger games were still very affordable back then.
Hmm.
And so it was I remember seeing for all my baseball fans out there, I remember seeing Darryl Strawberry playing for the New York Mets
No way.
when he was a baseball player,
Mm.
when he was playing for the Mets, and people would shout out Daryl and like taunt him in the outfield.
Hmm.
I think for us, when family members would come from Guadalajara, Mexico to visit, they would be like, "Oh, I want to go to a Dodger game because I've never been." And so
Hmm.
obviously, in a Latino family, like, okay, well, here are the days. When are we going? And
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
you have to drop everything, and you're all of a sudden at the Dodger game on a random weeknight.
Wow.
But it was a regular thing, I would say, in our household. Watching them. I have friends who are into the Dodgers, so from coworkers, past and present coworkers at Upward Bound. Um, some of our, in Trio and some of our student development, some of our research development, we have to raise funds for the association. So in SoCal, in West Up SoCal at least, that's our kind of go-to sporting event that, is easy for us to kind of like raise
Oh,
funds
that's
for the
cool.
association.
That's wonderful.
I'm super close actually to Dodger Stadium, so it's not like you have to be in a car and get stuck in traffic
Right.
for hours and hours. At least at least we know how to take like the back streets.
Okay.
And on the flip side, we're actually really lucky that Occidental College is like you jump on the freeway and it's like two exits from campus.
Oh, wow.
And so for
Uh,
us, at least also in our Upward Bound program, we make it a cultural event because that way we can take the students to a Dodger game,
That's
and
awesome.
it's part of our summer program. Tradition. It's almost a tradition. Like if the schedule doesn't work out, then we'll try to find other stuff to do. But we like to take the students to the Dodger game
Hmm.
because even in 2023, in the times that we're in, a lot of students still are telling us, "Oh, this is my first time going to a Dodger game."
Wow. Yeah.
Like either my parents are so busy, or I think some students won't tell you like, "Oh, we don't have money to go."
Hmm.
But for we still see students who it's the first time going to the Dodger game, and all of our target schools in Upward Bound are like neighboring Dodger Stadium. But yet
Mm.
our students can't access the history of it.
Hmm.
I mean, I think a lot of the students know about I just want to go see like Clayton Kershaw or Max Muncy
Hmm.
or my favorite player, Chris Taylor from Virginia Beach. Um, and it seems like elusive almost to them because you can
Mm.
literally hear like you if you live in the neighborhood across from the LA River, you can hear like the sound. It's like that close.
Mm. Wow.
But I think Dodger games are if you don't like to go to like happy hour after work or go to a dinner after work and things like that, then a Dodger game is always a good option to go to after work.
Oh, that sounds like fun. So now I have to ask, because you say you also love cooking or you like to cook. What is your go-to recipe? What's it something that you like to cook?
Oh,
Like you got it.
I'm glad you definitely asked this. It's come up as an icebreaker in West Board and Service Council meetings. I I don't make it often, but when I get into it, I like to make like chicken tinga.
Oh,
Um,
that sounds interesting.
I make it. One of my aunts first introduced me to it, and she was like, "It's pretty much just like shredded white chicken, or you could do brown meat chicken. I like
Hmm.
white. I like breast meat chicken only, so I'm pretty picky. I'm like picky that way.
Hmm.
It's a tomato sauce base. You put chipotle peppers in it, like not the adobo sauce that
Hmm.
comes in the can. You have to like drain it out and mostly use like the adobo peppers.
Hmm.
Um, so you make your tomato sauce like that. You mix it up with the chicken to put in like simple terms. You shred the chicken. You mix it up in the adobo sauce or your tomato sauce that you make.
Hmm.
Once everything is like getting soaked up, you put like sliced onions on top. So the sliced onions, the idea is this is what my aunt told me. When you make it, the idea is not for the onions to cook amongst the chicken, but so they can sweat and go get translucent. And the onions are
Oh.
just sitting at the top of the chicken.
Oh.
And you can it's pretty hearty, so I would get like thicker tostadas that they sell at the grocery store.
Hmm.
There's the kind of thin ones, which are very useful, but there's thicker tostadas that they sell in the grocery
They
stores
do.
here in
Yeah.
LA and or in our cultural markets, and those are the ones you kind of want to get. It's very simple. I like it like that. Like in a typical Latino household, people like to put lettuce or crema mexicana on top or
Hmm.
cheese and things like that. So that's what if I'm like, oh my God, I have nothing to do, let me get the chicken that's on sale and then I'll make this in a couple of days.
There you
Um,
go.
I've I've made it I made it for I think a potluck at work.
Hmm.
One time we took our students on your senior retreat for our Upward Bound students, and I made it for the Upward Bound students too. So
Wonderful.
yeah.
Horacio, that you sound like you're a very talented cook. Like you have like that specialty, but yeah, that's wonderful. I love to hear that. Um,
I'm I'm luckily like in our office. It's
mhm.
funny, we all bring our own food every single day. So once in a while we'll coordinate like ahead of time, like y'all, I'm kind of over bringing food, like let's go out like on a particular day. But for the
Uh-huh.
most part, um I don't mind. I try to do basic stuff,
Mm-hmm.
like some chicken, some rice, or a piece of lomo and some fried beans,
There you go.
and you know, keeping it easy.
Right on. So, follow-up question. On your non-cooking days, what spot do you like to go to?
I'm gonna be honest to everybody out there in Trio. If I don't have plans after work, I
Huh.
I'm fine with this. I just want to come home
Oh, no,
and
I feel that.
change. Maybe put on my a Dodgers t-shirt or like the gym shorts and a t-shirt and just like I just want to like chill.
You just want to chill.
And because you know what, Juan, like either maybe since before when I was West Up SoCal president or even
Hmm
I was the PR chair, I still find myself like if I don't open my laptop, sometimes I can't resist but like check my email
Oh, I feel that.
or uncheck it on my phone because the only accounts I have on my phone are my work email and my personal email. But I
Hmm
have the PR chair email and I have another email account for Weststop that I watch. So, I'm always tempted to be like, well, has anybody said anything about like the Weststop listserv email I just sent out? Because right
hmm
now we're in conference time.
hmm
So I'm like, is anybody replying late at night? Sometimes I'll be like, I'm just gonna wait till tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
But honestly, like here at home, I like to be tidy and stuff like that. So if I see that my room is a mess or I like to fold, I just have to like fold stuff and keep stuff organized. If there's no food at home being made or if I'm not feeling what's here at home, then I'll make myself something else. I like to really take control of sometimes the situation, whether it's making sure that my room is clean, what's in the kitchen. Oh, let me just make my own stuff. So that way I can take my lunch to go so I can not spend money around campus.
Okay, so you are one budget conscious and just being aware of like you don't like to eat out that much is what I'm hearing, and
Mhm.
staying in is preferred. Okay, no, I feel that. I feel
Yeah.
that.
I mean,
Uh,
I'm budget conscious because I do have a spending habit on Nike shoes. So
oh, got you.
maybe
Okay,
once in a while I'm leaving work early because I have to go pick up my order at the Nike store.
got it, got
Yeah.
it. So, Horacio, we're almost done with this year. We're recording this episode in October. What have you accomplished this year, and what is something that you have yet to accomplish?
I um I mean, okay, I guess I'll give a few examples. I think finishing off a program year for Upper Bound is always a success. And
Always.
so at Oxy Upper Bound, we were one of those old school June 1 programs. And
Mm.
so our fiscal year or our program year ends on May 30th or May 31st,
Oh,
whatever,
wow.
however many days May has.
Right.
And so, that's the same month we get to celebrate our seniors and then going off to college and starting our summer program. And so I think having closing out another successful academic year or a program year with Oxy Upper Bound. We've been around since 1965, so
Wow,
I'm very proud
congratulations.
to be. Thanks. I'm very proud to be of a trio program that's been around for such a long time. I don't take it lightly. Sometimes it can be very rigid in the office, um, but that's my personality. I think in Upper Bound. Um, I'm very proud of again having another summer program. But more than just you have to do a summer program. So I wouldn't tap myself on the shoulder for that. But we did have a college fair on campus. We invited about I would call them friends of Upward Bound. So we invited Cal State LA Upward Bound,
Hmm
Telacu Upward Bound, LMU Upward Bound, and Pasadena City College Upward Bound. And we told them, hey, we're planning on having this college fair. Come to campus and bring your students. And those are all of those programs showed up, plus our students. And we had a college fair in the middle of Occidental College. And we had about 30 to 40 different colleges and universities come out from community college to Cal State's UC's,
hmm
private schools. I think Colorado State University is part of the RAC consortium,
Oh, right.
so
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they may have been there, but like Iowa and University of New Mexico and Syracuse University, and all of these colleges were here. And when you put on a big event like that, it can be very stressful. And so
Certainly.
I'm like, reps are calling you or emailing you saying like, "Oh, can I make sure to have a tent because it's gonna be hot?" And I was like, "Well,
Hmm.
it's summer. Of course, it's gonna be hot,
Yeah.
but you have to accommodate for these folks who are coming to spend their time." And I thought it was super amazing. All of the students, I think, really had a good time. We had like tea and lemonade from campus and cookies. And we took a really big picture at the end before all of the students left. And so if you visit our, I think it's on our website. If you visit our Oxy Upper Bound website, the picture of all of the students in all of their different Upper Bound t-shirts, I thought that was really cool because our students were in their own t-shirts. The other trio programs had their students in their own t-shirts, so you could see like the difference in like all of the programs there. And the funny thing was is like somebody had to like jump in the fountain to take the picture so they could all fit.
Yeah.
And I
Oh, wow.
automatically kind of just ended up the one going into the fountain and
Oh
rolling
my
up my
gosh.
shorts.
Yeah.
And I literally had to like step in the fountain, and the water was cold, but I mean, and my director Oswaldo was like counting them off to take a picture and also kind of take like a boomerang.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I mean, I would say the only other thing I would say is I finished grad school back in May. And so
Congratulations.
yeah, that was my 2-year journey of going back to school at 41 or whenever I started and working on my master's program. I researched a little bit during the time of the pandemic when we were having to work from home.
Hmm.
Asking my couple of my trio colleagues, like, well, what do you think about? Actually, one of them was in Colorado, by the way.
Oh.
University of Denver has an online school called University
Mhm.
School or something like that.
Yeah.
And it was going to be an all online program. And then there was University of Laverne. And I asked one of my colleagues in Central California, hey, what do you think? Like, which one would you do? Because the price difference wasn't very much. And he was like, go with Laverne because it has more businessy classes. And
Mm.
the leadership and management program at Laverne, all of the courses are in management. And so I was like, cool, that's going to be different. But, and obviously, when you could think of retrospect, you're like, why was it so much harder while I was doing it? But the program was great. I learned a lot. I did my capstone project on the progress of Latinos in higher education, and I intertwined some first generation aspects as much as I could. But of course, I thought I'm like I could have done a better job. But very happy with my performance in grad school. I got the best grades in grad school compared to my Oxy experience because
Hmm.
I'm also an alumni of Occidental College, and so my Oxy grades and my grad school grades are completely on the opposite ends of the spectrum.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But I think I'm very fortunate to work for an upper bound program that gave me like the time and the grace to leave work early or say, I need to go do this, can you give me some time? But overall, I think it's been a successful year because we're pushing through with our students. We're looking forward to First Generation Day next month. We have a
Hmm.
board of trustee member coming from campus, a
Wow.
sociology professor coming to share his story from growing up in Northeast LA, in the hood. That's what I would say. Um, and going to Harvard,
Oh, wow.
and bringing those stories to our students because that's what I like.
Hmm.
Like sometimes it's not a workshop, sometimes it's not a presenter coming that you paid them to show up. It's about showing them real life examples that it's not us in the office, and so they can really kind of like get the message and see themselves in other people's shoes.
Absolutely.
So we're definitely not done. I think it's been a great year overall. Like I want to complain sometimes, but you know, we're working, we're making an impact, and so can I complain? Yes, but should I complain? No. You know?
Gotcha. Totally understandable. Um, my next question to you is, what is something that people don't know about you? Like they see Horacio as the assistant director for Upward Bound, but what is something they don't know about you outside of Upward Bound?
Um. Oh. I think some people at I would say some people at Upper Bound and Oxy in general, or in Trio, is I'm an introvert,
Oh, really?
and
I
so
wouldn't have guessed. I wouldn't have guessed.
and you can let me know too, but I like to keep to myself.
Mm,
I like to just chill in my room, and if I wasn't on this podcast with you, I'd be watching the soccer game on USA.
okay.
Um, but I'm very like, if I don't have anything to check on my phone, or if I don't have any follow-up text to, hit up people, like I'll just put my phone on the side and not pay attention to it. Like
Hmm.
if the light goes on, like, okay, like who texted me, or like what's up? And I'm very reserved in a way where like I just want to be me.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the being me is like I like to do my own thing. I like to make my own plans and just like step out on the weekends. Um, I um yeah, I think in the professional setting you see a very different Horacio, and at home in the personal you see the opposite. And so
Hmm.
when I'm in a West Up conference, for example, I put myself out there. I try to reconnect with familiar faces or make sure people feel welcome, especially if it's their first West Up conference, or even going to COE in Washington, D.C.
Hmm.
Like if
Hmm.
there's opportunities to volunteer or, be in other spaces, I try to make people feel welcome and put myself out there, because when I started first working in Trio, like I was anxious and nervous about being in front of directors and
Hmm.
executive this and assistant dean this and things like that. And even on
Hmm.
campus, it's the same way. Like, even though you'd go to a small school like Oxy, I would feel intimidated and like stay like 6 feet away from like the dean or, that person who meets with the president and stuff like that.
Hmm.
But nowadays, like, I say hello to the dean. I go up to him and I shake his hand and I say, "Hey, Rob, how's it going? Like, how's your kid doing?" Um, he recently had like a baby with him and his wife, so I like to
Hmm.
ask him about his kid, and I feel more connected as I get more comfortable and can ask you, "Oh, how are you doing?" Like, or crack a joke and things like that.
Yeah.
But I think my rigidness from work also translates to here at home, and so like again, if something is dirty, like I like to make sure that I clean on the weekends, that my laundry is done on the weekends, that I trade out my sheets on the weekends.
Hmm. Hmm.
That I'm just, I think I put in my bag. I like to just keep it like low key.
Yeah.
Like I know there's some nights where like you have to put effort into. I would say for me, putting effort into just hanging out and being present and having a good time and not thinking about work. Like sometimes that takes effort on my part, because
Hmm.
I could easily be at the bar like before we go to the Kings game, for example, and be checking my email because I'm
Hmm.
concerned about like, oh, I still haven't heard from so and so, and National First Generation Day is coming up, or this is coming up, and like let me check my email real quick. And my coworkers would tell me like, dude, like take a step back. Like we're hanging out here. We're about to walk over to Crypto or Staples Center and like enjoy yourself. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes it takes work for me to enjoy myself and be in the moment sometimes.
Okay. I'm curious, Horacio, for a lot of schools, after the pandemic happened back in 2020, they've had to quickly adapt to virtual environments. I'm curious, has your campus adopted post-pandemic? And I know it's still technically happening because, you still have COVID
Mm.
cases. But I'll say post lockdown. I'll say it like that. Has your campus adopted virtual meetings as an option for students, or do you still all prefer one-on-one?
I would say for our targets for working with the upward bound students, no, everything is completely in person.
Hmm.
Um, because we are going into the fall, because it's, for some people, either the flu is going to get you, or, which, I got my flu shot last week. So I was like, I'm not going to wait any much longer. Um, I'll still wear a mask when I'm in an indoor closed space when we go to the schools.
Hmm.
We're in front if we're in front of the students. Um, I try to take a mask with me, but if I don't have one, I'll just say like, oh, whatever, well, whatever, or I'll grab a mask like at the schools. And like you said, we're still going through it, or some people consider it post-pandemic. Our schools at the entrances or in some offices have masks. They have hand sanitizer, so I
Hmm.
definitely take advantage of that. But everything that we do with our students at the school sites is fully in person. We have in-person Saturday sessions only. We just went on a campus tour yesterday to Azusa Pacific University.
Hmm.
So shout out to former West Top past president Armando Bustos, who hosted our campus tour yesterday. And is life back to normal? I would say no, because we were doing a school site visit at one of our local schools, and we saw one of our students like she was like in the quad area, and it's right across from the counseling office and some of the like the attendance office. And we were like, "Are you okay?" And I noticed in her hand she had a COVID strip test, and I knew exactly what was going on. And I was
Oh.
like, "Are you okay?" She was like, "No, I had to go home." And I was like, "Do you mind if I look at your test strip?" And I could see like the little line going across. And what I've learned, at least in fall semester, and I'm glad I we saw her was in LAUSD, the students do have to go home if they do test positive for COVID. You have
Oh.
to stay home for those 5 days. On the sixth day, you have to start testing. And if you don't get a positive reading, then you can come back.
Hmm.
But they have set up a system where the students have to log into a website through their student account and log in their positive readings so that I guess somehow it's supposed to translate to their teachers finding out, and that way they can send them work to stay active or not fall behind.
Hmm.
Um, on I would say for at Occidental College, being in student Upward Bound is held in student affairs, and so in up in on campus, everything is back in person. Our monthly student affairs meetings are back in person. Um, and people like to wear a mask, and those that don't. But I like to have my mask on the side, except if I'm eating. We always have breakfast at those student affairs meetings, so when it's come down to eating and hanging out with folks before the meeting starts, I won't have my mask on. But as the meeting is going on, and I'm like looking up and paying attention, I have to have my mask on. I make sure to take a mask with me from the office if I go up to campus, if I want to go to the mailroom, or they're college students, and you don't know where the college students are going or where they're coming and
Right.
going, and so or what's happening on the weekend. So I'd rather be safe. I got COVID earlier back in January, and it felt a little bit different that
Hmm.
time. Because there was one day where I wasn't feeling good, but the rest of the day it was just like just tiredness or something like that.
Mm, yeah.
But I would say 100%. You know, COVID is still being recognized. There's testing options. Luckily, I work at a campus where if you're not feeling well, they actually encourage you to go up to the health center and take a rapid test, and they'll support you. Like they'll send you the notification if you get a positive reading. They'll give you the instructions on the timelines and everything like that. They'll notify your supervisor for you, or let you know, or ask you, who have you been in contact on campus, like within the past couple of days or something. So our campus has actually done a really great job. They're trying to bring back a vaccine pop up so people can get the COVID vaccine, but first they focus on like the flu shots. So that's they've actually been really supportive and recognizing that it's not gone away.
Yeah. That's very important. Horacio, so this is the part of the podcast where I'm going to rewind the clocks back a bit. Can you talk to us about your upbringing and what it was like for you to grow up in your household?
Oh wow. I would say it was very like humble. Um, for lack of a better word, things were very like basic.
Hmm.
We lived in I I've only lived in two places, and the same like zip code adjacent. I've always lived in East LA, my entire life, except for when I moved up to the Bay Area after college. That's the only time where I didn't live in LA. Um, I would say like super humble beginnings
Super humble.
growing
Okay.
up. I remember in my house, I don't know exactly if we were ever like on welfare or on government assistance, but I remember like the silver cans of peanut butter. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah.
so I don't know if, it may vary by age, but y'all in trio, like when you grew up, like I think if you had that silver can of peanut butter that had USDA at the outside of it, either we received it at our own household or our neighbor, or maybe it was a food giveaway. Because food giveaways weren't a thing back in the day.
No, yeah, yeah.
You had to go to the office and either pick up the groceries or however it happened. But I remember the silver can of peanut butter, and I was like, I think at one time, I think growing up, you don't realize that, like, Dad, we were poor, or maybe poor isn't the right word to use, but you just were at a certain level of a socioeconomic status,
Mm-hmm.
and as a kid, that doesn't click to you.
Right.
But Um, we lived in an all one unit duplex, so we lived on the top, and there was a family that lived on the bottom. Really cool family lived downstairs, so it was always like super chill. And we always had like a little open cement area, and so we
Mm.
never played like outside on the street.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we would gather with like the other neighborhood kids, and because the street around us was kind of like a cul-de-sac, and then the main street led up to the cul-de-sac up to the freeway. So it was like a cool place to kind of like throw the football, or people would skateboard and like lay flat facing down on the skateboard and go down the street, like probably not safe. But as a kid, you're not thinking about like you could bust your
Right.
face. Um, and no, I'll never forget this. So my grandpa would come and visit with us once in a while,
Mm-hmm.
and my voice may crack a little bit because it's, I think, emotional to me
It's okay.
right now. So my grandpa would come once a week, and he would at the end of the day, because he lived out in the Inland Empire, so he would take the bus all the way to visit us, and one time he gave me, well, he would give us $1 every time. It was like our domingo.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like the middle of the week. And so it was kind of like an allowance. And I wanted to take my dollar and go to the liquor store and go get like a candy, some chips.
Yeah.
A dollar
Yeah.
went far back in the day. And my dad told me like, no, you can't go to the store.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what time of day it was, but he told me no, and I got upset. And so I threw the dollar in the trash because he didn't let me spend the dollar. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
not thinking like, of course, maybe he's subliminally trying to tell me like, just go tomorrow or put it away. But
Mm-hmm.
I threw the dollar in the trash, and that like turned into a whole thing. And my dad took a spatula and he hit me on the hand.
Mm.
And I don't get upset about, it's not a triggering moment for me to talk about that or anything, because um growing up, like we were growing up in a time where like our parents like slapped us across the hand and stuff like that. Not in a
Absolutely.
bad way,
Right.
but in a, hey, like get it together.
Right.
Um and so yeah, it's just something I remember. It's so vivid. Like it happened yesterday, Juan. But yeah. Um and I always remember my parents growing up. We were fortunate enough that both of my parents always worked.
Mm.
Both of my parents worked like in a factory setting. My mom assembled office parts like hole punchers and staplers and things like that. And my dad did like the electro polishing of like metal parts
Mm.
and things like that, from very small to very big tubes like that were eventually used at like the construction of airports or buildings and things like that. But it was
Oh, right.
the nitty gritty of making the metal look nice for the final delivery of wherever it's going. And so someone would always take care of us. So for us, it was either my aunt or one of the neighbors who also had kids at the school that we were going to. And so whenever our parents left for work, there was always somebody that was there in the morning or was there in the afternoon when we got home. And we were always able to get rides from our friends because we all lived in the same neighborhood and the school wasn't like very far.
Hmm.
And so like I said earlier, one time we moved, again, not too far. It was like zip code adjacent. And I still live on the same street since like 1987, 1988.
Oh.
And so we've been on this street for a really long time. Currently, we live across the street from an elementary school. So it's a super chill neighborhood.
Hmm.
It's semi a main street, so usually during the week or in the evening time, there is a lot of traffic or cars coming up and down the street. But the neighborhood is your average Latino neighborhood where there's a gentleman who runs a liquor store down the street who is making his actual store look nice with a nicely paved driveway and things like that. So the neighborhood is super chill and accommodating. There are some newer places that, I mean, you could consider gentrification or not, but $6, $7 cold brews, which I try not to buy, but I realize they're also a small business and the people are nice, so
Yeah.
I do it once in a while. But I think my upbringing has always been like when I look back at it, nothing I've never missed. I've never there's everything has always been available to me. Nothing has ever lacked.
Hmm.
I've never lacked housing. I've never lacked like food. I've never lacked like family or the presence of other people. So I've been super fortunate. Um, yeah.
That's wonderful. So I'm gonna put this kind of reflection question on you and say, how would your family describe you?
Um, I think they would describe me more as an introvert for sure.
Describe you as an
Um,
introvert? Okay.
yeah, they would describe me as quiet, reserved. I'm not very like super chatty. I don't um I don't like chisme or I don't like gossip. And in a Latino household, I my parents are both Mexican American. Um, you still well, at least my mom definitely stays in touch with relatives in Mexico, and obviously they're telling her like what's happening and things like that. And so they
Hmm.
just want to tell her like, girl, why are you getting involved? Like everything is happening like uh, however far Guadalajara is, like a
It's pretty
thousand
far,
miles,
right?
a
Yeah.
thousand or a 2.5 hour flight. But and like, what are you talking about? And I just try to. Everybody has their own thing. I'm not a phone call kind of person unless I have to. I prefer communicating via text, but I would say they would say I'm very like quiet and reserved. I would say maybe I manage certain things okay, like um, just connecting with the outside world if like there's an issue with the garbage or maybe a neighbor blocking the street or um, reaching out to get help maybe from like the county regarding an issue or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, I've been fortunate to have this job with Upward Bound where, I have a retirement plan and I have these, benefits and things like that that I taken advantage of. So
Right, right.
maybe they see me as a person that hey, what is this paper that they're sending a picture of your house and it says, oh, we could sell your house.
Mm.
And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just like, no, throw that away. Like that's trash. Like don't
Mm-hmm.
pay attention to it. Or just because it says like open immediately, like it's just junk mail, like stop.
Right.
But yeah, I would maybe not as secretive, maybe I'm just not forthcoming with certain things.
Mm.
Um, you know, I when I was 28, I came out to my mom, but other than maybe some of my coworkers, that's the only family member that I've actually like sat down and said it out loud.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, I think my mom sees me as like the go-to person. Um, and even in my master's program, I was really secretive about that.
Mm.
Like, um, I didn't, I really didn't let anybody know I went back to school. Um, all I think they would notice is like I would close my door, and just not come out for several hours
Mm-hmm.
because that was the day that paper was due, or I would come home from work early because I had to jump on Zoom at like 6 o'clock and be on Zoom for like an hour and a half or two. Um, and I'm gonna be very truthful with everybody. Like um, I didn't tell my mom or my family that I was about to graduate from Laverne until like the month of May.
Oh, wow.
And
Wow.
my graduation was Memorial Day weekend. And so I knew I had to say eventually let them know because
Mm-hmm.
I can't just drop this on them like the weekend before so we can all go to the graduation. Like maybe I let them know early May and the graduation was again, like I said, Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
So I think for those examples, I would say like I'm very reserved, quiet, not shy, but I really like to just keep to myself.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember what you felt about school in your early years, like elementary? What did you feel about school? What was your feeling towards school?
I thought school was chill. I'm the school that's accredited from us. I went there from second through sixth grade,
Mm-hmm.
and so I liked it when it was like probably reading time or your hour of art and things like that. By the third and the fourth grade, I remember being kind of like good at math, and so the teacher would like have those timetable worksheets where like it was the number three and it was three times every single number and you had to like be
Oh,
timed
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
it would be like three times one, three times two, three times three, and so on and so on and so on. And I was really good at that. Like I would maybe my sheets were all done by, ahead of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, was I considered gifted? No, because I don't think I was able to like pass the test like that. Which little square has the most dots and things like
Oh, yeah,
that.
yeah. Those little tests.
Because I remember sitting in an office and I'm like, oh, well, they're giving me a test. Like, okay, but like I was never in the magnet program here in LAUSD. I was
Mm-hmm.
always a regular traditional residential student. And then the magnet program, that's where the gifted students fall, at
Mm-hmm.
least in LAUSD. And you can apply through an application and see which programs are available with you in the district.
Mm-hmm.
But I just went to my local school, like in all my upbringing. Um, and I thought school was really fun. In elementary school, in middle school, it was different, of course, because you're going from class to class where you actually get to, or you have an English teacher and you have this subject teacher, like your history teacher or your science teacher. And I thought that was super chill. I was going to middle school here in LA, during the time of I forget which proposition it was because there was one in middle school and there was one in high school. But around the time of Prop 187 and Prop 209, 209 was around affirmative action in public universities and colleges. Prop 187 had to do with I'd have to do my research and get back to you, but I
Yeah.
think it was about language or something being held from non-residents or
Mm,
something having to do with it was something against people of color
hmm.
because there was that type of legislation and I remember in middle school the students were really upset and I don't know how this got organized, but there was a walkout in middle school
Mm,
and the
hmm.
students we literally got up from whatever class we were at and we tried to leave campus, but in the main doors the staff was like blocking the doorway and there wasn't anybody who
Whoa. Yeah.
wanted to like force the issue and
Hmm.
so we kind of like continued to walk out of class, but we were kind of like just gathering in like the little quad area where like all of the students eat lunch and stuff like that. So nobody got in trouble or anything like that. I think the administration just saw that like like any college student or at your student in high school or whatever, we wanted to express our issue at the time and
Hmm.
say that this was wrong and not fair. Um, and anything even my high school experience was good too. Granted, that's a big jump. I think that I noticed. Like my mom would tell me the first day of high school, like, "Oh, don't tell anybody you don't have a phone because then they're gonna make fun of you."
Mm.
Because my mom didn't want us giving her phone number away, but it wasn't cool to say that you don't have a phone. So, those little tips from parents. But my high school experience was great. I had a friend who I would get a ride with because high school is a little bit farther from here.
Hmm.
I went to high school at one of our target schools that Upper Bound still serves.
Oh,
And
wow.
so I'm also an alum of Oxy Upper Bound. And so
Hmm.
ninth grade was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Like this is okay. Like I was able to manage and things like that. And I think there was definitely a change in 10th grade. I'm not sure if there's anything I could really like pinpoint to whether it was getting better or not, but in 10th grade was when I saw the Upward Bound presentation in the library.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I have to sign up. Like, I'm
Hmm.
gonna live in a dorm and they're gonna give me this, they're gonna give me that. And obviously in high school, all you hear is that, like, oh, I get to do this, I get to do that. They're gonna
Hmm.
take me to the Dodger game, they're gonna take me to the beach. I get to go to this college I've never been to. Like, I don't even know where this is at. Um, and I ended up applying and I ended up getting accepted into Upward Bound in the 10th grade.
Wow. Yeah.
Um, and I always liked my high school. I think everything was really like chill. I came across in high school. She was an Oxy alumni from a particular year,
Hmm.
not to give her age out, but her name was Miss Rodriguez. And Miss Rodriguez ended up being my Spanish teacher at
Oh,
Wilson High
wow.
School. And
Hmm.
so she was an Oxy alumni. And so when it came to senior year at Wilson, she actually helped me with my Oxy application because it was back on paper back in the day. And so there were short answer questions that you had to answer. And I was sitting in tutoring after school, and she was one of the teachers who would do tutoring after school. So I was like, hey, Miss Magigas, can you help me with my Oxy application? Of course, she was like, yes. And I think the mixture of Upward Bound with the connection to college, and I think a general kind of like for school
Hmm.
was like, this is not bad.
Yeah.
Because by the time I got to the 11th grade, again, we walked out of high school because of Prop 209. And that was more intense because we actually left campus
Hmm.
and we walked down to Lincoln Heights Park at Plaza de la Raza, which
Yeah.
it's not close. I wouldn't walk from my high school to the park, to Lincoln Heights Park, just because I'm like, I don't want to walk all that. But in high school, you don't care because
Hmm.
you're amongst a group of friends and things like that. Like, I remember walking out of high school, the bell was gonna ring or somebody was gonna pull the fire alarm. I had a sign with me, and so I had made a sign at home. and I took it with me to school.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember putting it under my seat in high school. We used to have those chairs with like it was like kind of a smooth granite with a blue chair attached to it with a little basket under the
Mm-hmm.
chair.
Oh,
And
kind of vaguely remember those.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I remember putting my poster under the chair, and my English teacher, I'd rather not say her name, but she was like, "Oh, what is this?" And I was like, "Oh, it's just a poster." And either I let her grab the poster or she just grabbed it because she
Mm-hmm.
wanted to see what was on it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and at the time I didn't think of anything, but I would say I shouldn't have let her like grab my poster. But I think she ended up seeing like what was written on the poster. I think the
Mm-hmm.
teachers knew that the students were gonna walk out because I think things were happening in general because people were totally opposed to Prop 209 at the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah.
But the bell rang and we walked out of school and nobody stopped any of the students. We left
Wow.
campus. We walked down the hill from Wilson High School. We walked over to Lincoln Heights Park to Plaza de la Raza. There was students were speaking. There may have been other students from Lincoln High School because Lincoln High School is pretty close. Lincoln High School is also one of our target high schools at Upward Bound. And so I think there was kind of like a general community gathering. And then eventually, I'm pretty sure there was like school police or something because we were minors. It was during school time. And so once everything was over, we walked back to Wilson High School, and it's a trek because Wilson's on top of a hill.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember there was cars. It was either parents or parent volunteers or staff from the school. A padre from the community, like one of the priests, was also in the crowd when we were walking back to high school because I think they wanted to make sure that we all got back okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're walking back to school, and I want to say again, we didn't get into trouble because I think at the time, again, it was a time where students really wanted to express themselves, and you know, I and I know that word was definitely out because I want to say there was media around too, covering this, and so I just the the enjoyment of school and just having it, I guess, I don't want to try to say like that it should be good for everybody and that everybody should have access and that sometimes you do have to push against the grain and ask like, well, why is this like this?
Mm-hmm.
Why should we allow this to happen? And at a young age, like you don't know that, you get a bunch of signatures on a initiative and all of a sudden it becomes a ballot. At least in California, that's the way it goes. You get a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of signatures. Some people are more successful than others because money is always an issue in politics.
Certainly.
And I think it was my first inclination that I meant to advocate for something, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and it and in my job, I advocate for these students in our schools and even for our college students. And
Mm-hmm.
as you know, in Trio, we have to advocate for even our own programs as a
Yeah, we do.
community, as a Trio community. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think I've had I would say a long tenure of experience, maybe disrupting or just saying like, no, why is this like this?
Right.
Like I'm gonna protest or I'm gonna do this or you know, the other day, COE sent out a letter regarding the better FAFSA and how it's being addressed to the Secretary of Education, and COE signed on to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the, I guess the politician in me, I downloaded the letter without asking COE or if I can do this. And I hope I don't get in trouble with COE, but I already did it. I downloaded the letter and I sent it to my congressman here in the district, and I sent it to the educational aide that we
Mm-hmm.
met with back in March with policy seminar, and I sent it to the. He's like a policy analyst, but he's the person. He's an aide from Congressman Gomez's office when he normally works in DC, but
Mm-hmm.
he hit us up recently, and I was like, I'm gonna be in the LA area. Can I come to the Upper Bound office? And so he's got like I think he's a legislative analyst or something like that, or whatever his title is. And so I emailed the letter to two of his people in the office, and I wrote him I never mean to be nasty, but I just like to, what is the issue? And I want to get to the issue like clear cut because I don't want to waste their time either.
Certainly.
And so here's what's happening. Here, I'm attaching this letter. This is a big concern for our families. This is going to have a negative impact on vulnerable families, especially, and I have to throw in our upward bound students. And I haven't heard from them.
Mhm.
And so obviously I do it through my personal email account. I don't send it from my work email because you're not supposed to do that. So
Right.
giving that pro tip out to everybody out there. Always do stuff with your personal email, and I can't let this linger. I think if we continue to hear nothing about the FAFSA, I think we need to put pressure on Congress. As messy it is right now, but we have to keep this on our radar because from what I've heard about the better FAFSA, there's, I think, still things that for some of our families who, let's just put it out there, don't trust the government or don't want to put their certain personal information, they may not want to create a FAFSA ID for their child to prepare for financial aid. And that's like step
Mhm.
one. And so I think I think in general, Juan, education is my niche.
Mhm.
And there's always been, I think, now that we're talking about it, a political kind of aspect to it. Because if it's not my congressman, I need some elected official coming to our upper bound events. So whether
Mhm.
it's our state assemblywoman, our county supervisor, a U.S. senator, like y'all need to be here so you can see what is happening in the community.
Mhm.
So you can see these high school students who have to navigate college a different way than the students who have everything available to them in other districts.
Wow. So it sounds like your activism and just your passion for advocacy really took shape in high school.
Yeah, I would say yes, one because again, like with Prop 209, as students, you only know the story from like what you see on TV, or you
Right.
only know the story that's what your friend is telling you. And is
Right.
your friend always telling you like verbatim what they read? Like, no, they're probably putting their own personal spin to it.
Certainly.
But I I think I like to tell people like, look, these are the facts. You
Mhm.
can come to your own conclusion. Um, let's say I'm putting my 2 cents out there in a chapter meeting. Like I like to put my 2 cents out there and hey, let's talk about it like afterwards. Or if you feel a certain way about something, then let's sit and chat after the meeting. Or let's connect and let me help you, you know, express your thoughts or, do this. Because I mean it can go a really long way.
It really
You
could.
know,
Yeah.
I like to see my colleagues having their elected officials. I like to see pictures of, congressmen and senators and, elected officials going to trio events and seeing what's being done because
Mhm.
although it is a national education program, like I think state, local officials need to also see like the investment that's happening in these communities.
Absolutely. Uh, Going back, I'm going to backpedal a little bit, Horacio. What drew you to the Upward Bound program when you were in high school? What was it about the program that really spoke to you?
Um, I mean, I like to say this. I saw the upper bound presentation on flip chart
All right.
before PowerPoint.
Uh-huh.
So no, like to be super honest, Juan, I saw the Upper Bound presentation at the Wilson High School Library, and I saw this gentleman come to Upper Bound. His name was Gilbert Acuna. He was the associate director of Upper Bound, and he worked. The director at the time was Susan Madrid Simon, who they both had been at Upper Bound for years, and so I think I don't know what clicked in my mind. I think I saw opportunity. I saw something that maybe I can continue my educational after high school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think like a typical upper like any trio program, you have to advertise what you're about.
Mm-hmm.
I think the message resonated. I think the fact that at the time, we were told a story of like, all of our parents do different jobs from cleaning to working in a factory. So I think there was a personal connection. There was
Mm-hmm.
a personal connection. There's a personal story being told, and it just resonated with me because I imagined my parents, you know, they're the ones working minimum wage to a little bit above minimum wage in these
Mm-hmm.
factory jobs for like 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
And you just assume that everything is fine and dandy and that, you know, that maybe opportunities are not always going to come your way. And so I think the personal connection of this story being told in conjunction with Upward Bound offered and helping you get to college and things like that. I think my liking of school and at the time continue to get comfortable with who I was or like
Mm-hmm.
just liking school and things like that. I was like, it's not gonna hurt me to sign up or it's not gonna hurt me to do the application and do an interview.
Mm-hmm.
This program is gonna help me. Um, I think at the time, honestly, when you're a 10th grade in high school, I'm not really sure if you're thinking about college
Mm-hmm.
in such a way that they're presenting it to you. But I knew I wanted to go to college.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't know where. And the last place I thought I would end up was at Occidental College. But as an Upper Bound participant, on the flip side of that, there was just something about the campus. There was something about um, the connection that the Upper Bound program had to campus of being there for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the just just the way that it was. I think there was Susan and Gilbert, but there was also all of the staff. And I
Mm-hmm.
think your staff makes your program golden because I think that I can only preach to the choir so much. And I don't like to preach to the students. I like to give them the facts that
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to sugarcoat this. Pay attention to this. This is what's happening, and this is what's coming down the line.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be paying attention to these things that we need to just give time and grace to, and not just gloss over. Um, and No, yeah, the I just the way the summer program was set up. And so when I was in Upward Bound, we were completely residential for the entire 5 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Some students, so we had classes Monday through Friday. On Friday nights was when our Friday night activities would happen. We also had activities on Wednesday nights to kind of like de-stress.
Mm-hmm.
And then the activities continued on into Saturday also. And so usually your participation in Upward Bound was Monday through Saturday.
Wow.
On Sundays, if your parent or guardian came and picked you up, you could leave on Sunday from 10 to 4, but you had to be back on Sunday by 4.
Mm-hmm.
But you had the option to leave on Sunday. And so I was like, cool, I'm going to live away from a dorm for, several weeks at a time. I think my parents would come and visit sometime maybe during the week to drop me off something or maybe an outfit for the award ceremony, things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
um, I was one of those students that got homesick, and so I was like, "Yo, this is too much for me. Like, I don't know what I'm doing here."
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly wanted to leave like on the second day, or maybe it was the first day. But like they tell you in trio, like you stick it out for the week, and then you make up your decision. And I want to say I never ended up going home on a Sunday. But my parents were able to come during the week sometimes to drop things off. So it was you know, I don't know what college I would have ended up in Upward Bound. Again, I want to reiterate the connection to the staff because you I would run into the staff like in college. And so I never realized that when my final year of Upper Bound in high school that some of the staff was going to Oxy. And so
Mm-hmm.
I would run into them and have like a general connection. Or even in 2023, funny story, we were recently doing recruitment at Lincoln High School, which is one of our target schools, and I was doing the high schools have club fairs or club rush. And I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna go to Club Rush and set up an upper bound table. And we're there talking about the program and passing out flyers, advertising that we're gonna start doing recruitment. And this lady comes up to me and she was like, do you remember me? And I'm like, oh no, like I don't know who you are. In my mind, I'm like, I don't know who you are. Like, who are you? Are you a parent?
Mm-hmm.
And then she said, no, I was a staff member when you were a student. And I was like, oh my God, Maria Medina. And and Ms. Medina, um, she was an Oxy grad, but
Mm-hmm.
in one of her years at Oxy, she was an RA when I was a student. And so
Oh.
and I had never seen her, I would say in over 20 years, that was my first time seeing her for the second again.
Mm-hmm.
Since
Mm-hmm.
I graduated from Upper Bound, since she graduated from Oxy, we caught up real quick. She's now vice principal at Lincoln High School,
Mm.
and she follows us on Instagram, so she sees where we're up to. So we have that like general connection, and we totally reconnected at Lincoln High School. And so I was like, oh my God, like I'm so glad you're here. Like that's so cool that you're a vice principal here now. So it's just one of those things where like I think the upward bound world is always revolving around you.
Mm-hmm.
And until you see like the connection. And so some of our upper bound alumni from Occidental College at least, or Oxy alumni, they become teachers or counselors. And so we will run into them either at one of our target high schools or and as they're moving up the ladder, we'll find out that, oh, well, so and so's not here anymore. They moved to a different school, but they're still in LAUSD.
Mm-hmm.
So again, there that upper bound connection, it'll get you and it'll run into you in the moment when you least expect it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that sounds great. Like it sounds like you that and th I'll just say this, Upward Bound, it sounds like came full circle for you. You being the assistant director, first being a student, going through the program, and now being the assistant director, like it really came full circle for you.
No, yeah, Juan. I mean, and I think when running into and I think when you run into parents who have had like multiple kids go through your program,
Mm-hmm.
I think it comes full circle for the parents too. Like when you have a student who, they went through the program, they graduated from high school, now they're in college, and they come back to work for us. We're
Mm-hmm.
very
Mm-hmm.
fortunate that maybe it's the geography of Southern California too, but we have former Oxy Upper Bound students, and sometimes they go far, but when they see the job posting come out in spring semester, they're like, or sometimes they ask a little early. They're like, "Oh, when are y'all gonna start hiring? Like, I want to come be a tutor, or I want to become an RA, or I want to, work for the program over the summer." And I'm like, "Cool, like our application is gonna come out, like check us out, things like that." The hardest part is when you have too many students coming back to work for you, or you have returning staff coming back to work for you. You have to say no to some of your former students. But
Mm-hmm.
um, if they're super enthusiastic and they give a good interview, like we'll refer them to other upper bound programs and say, you know what, it didn't work out maybe with us, or we didn't have the need, or maybe it wasn't a match, but check out this other program and you can still give back to Upward Bound. It's not going to be here where you were in a participant,
Mm-hmm.
and you're still going to be able to give the same impact.
Absolutely.
Like sometimes it doesn't have to be us. If it doesn't work out, then give back to another Upward Bound program that sometimes we struggle to get staff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but going back to the parent example, you have parents who will become advocates for you at the high school level. And as a parent, I think it comes full circle for them too, because they see their kid go through high school, they see them graduate from college, and they see them just transcend in so many ways. And then you have the sibling apply again, and then like
Mm. The new cycle
recently,
starts over.
and then you said exactly like we recently were doing recruitment again, and I was like, one of the students was like, "Oh, can you tell my brother and sister that you saw me at the Upward Bound presentation?" And I'm like, "Wait, what are you asking me to do?" And
Hmm.
he was like, "Yeah, my sister and so and so and so and so." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, why don't you just tell them that you were in the presentation?"
Yeah.
But it's always great to see students, but it's also great to see students who it's a sibling or it's a cousin or even a best friend of a current Upward Bound student,
Hmm.
because they're the ones that can really give a genuine, authentic, summary of what the program is like, other than
Hmm.
hearing it from us in the form of a presentation.
Absolutely. Um, I think it's important that you're making these generational outreaches, which is fantastic and amazing. Hey there. We'll be right back after a message from our sponsor.
Are you seeking guidance to enhance your TRIO project's effectiveness and success? Look no further. Nosotros Education Center, NEC, is here to empower your TRIO project with expert consulting services. NEC's mission is to promote the effectiveness and impact of TRIO programs. Since 2003, NEC has specialized in providing professional development and in-service staff trainings, allowable cost services, for TRIO projects across the country. The team at NEC, with over 60 years of combined TRIO experience, offers customized workshops and seminars for project staff, compliance assessments, external evaluations, working on and submitting APRs, database customization and training, development of policies and procedures manuals, and project implementation or reorganization services. Additionally, NEC has secured over $774 million in federal funding with a 92% success rate through their live and on-demand proposal workshops, assistance with data collection and review, detailed technical reviews, and comprehensive proposal development services. Join the hundreds of colleges, agencies, and TRIO projects across the country who benefited from NEC's expertise. Nosotros Education Center, your partner in TRIO's project success. Visit their website at nosotros.edu.org. Again, that's nosotrosedu.org.
And now back to the podcast. For you, kind of reflecting a little bit on high school, as Upward Bound was giving you these resources and providing kind of a new way to think about it, were other colleges in your mind? Like, were you thinking about, at that point, was college entering the realm of discussion, or were you able to talk about family about college?
Mm, I so I think the secretiveness in me, or not opening up as much, was still in me at a young age, because
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I was initiating the discussions about college, but my parents knew I was in this program, and they knew where Occidental College was, and you know, they would come to the Upward Bound events. Like the first Sunday in Upward Bound, traditionally, we had a Upward Bound picnic. And
Mm-hmm.
so it was this really cool thing in the quad where the families got invited. Um, there was games for the kids, and there was little activities, and it was like a good old family picnic with like food from campus. And so they were very familiar with, you know, certain parts of campus where the dorm was, that you could drop off things and things like that. But they, I don't think I was always bringing the issue up. Like I was more focused on school. I think when it
Mm-hmm.
was time to apply for college, I would probably come home with like a booklet, or like I still remember to this day, Juan, I had an application for the University of Oregon, because I remember I don't know, I probably got it from the college office in my school, but it was and it was all green, of course, because that's the like organs, colors, and things like that. But I think it just ended up staying somewhere in my room, or I eventually throw it away because either I didn't have a fee waiver or I couldn't
Mm.
use a fee waiver for it. And
Mm.
I wasn't gonna ask my parents for like $75 or whatever it costs to fill out a fee waiver. I think that's where I think for me I started to hit a juncture where, I didn't want to ask my parents for the money for these college applications. And so
Mm.
even being in Upward Bound and getting all this and being around such amazing staff and having these cool experiences, I think that for some Upward Bound students, and it's usually for the students who have both parents working because they make enough money, but they still qualify for services because they're first gen. Um, it becomes you hit a juncture. Either you're gonna get ask your money, you're either gonna ask your parents for the money for these college applications, or you're not gonna apply to these colleges.
Mm.
Or there's an uncomfortable discussion coming because the parents want to know, well, what if you apply and you don't get accepted? What's gonna happen to the money?
Mm.
Things like that. For some of our parents, like currently, I think a CSU application for Cal State University is $65 an application.
Mm.
Um, and back in the day, the fee waiver was on paper, so you didn't exactly know whether they were going to waive the college application fee.
Mm.
Nowadays, it's a lot different. The Cal State application will tell you whether your fee waiver gets approved, because there's a question in the application, and so you either have to pay with the fee waiver or you pay up front.
Mm.
But back in the day, you're able to pay later. I also remember that, but I never wanted to ask. And so, long story short, like I didn't apply to any Cal States because I wasn't about to ask, like, hey, can I have money for? I mean, 4 applications is almost like 200 and
Yeah,
$250,
so that's a lot of money.
and it's like, and I just have really big issues with that, like even now. But I took my college board fee waiver, and I applied to 4 colleges: Oxy, UC Riverside, UC Santa Barbara, and UC San Diego. And I got into all of those schools except for UC San Diego.
Mm.
And I mean, thankfully for me, I would say very fortunate enough for me, Oxy worked out because if it wasn't for Upward Bound, like I don't know where I would have ended up.
Mm.
If it wasn't for Upward Bound, like I, would I have been? I You can never predict the outcomes unless you kind of like actually go through it. But
Right.
I chose Oxy. Who knows where I would have been if I went to UC Riverside or UC Santa Barbara.
Mm. Mm.
And so, or I could have gone to community college, but I chose Oxy, and even that brought on, mm, I wouldn't say an uncomfortable conversation, but in our household, they brought up a conversation of, well, how much is this actually going to be, and where is the money going to come from?
Mm.
Because it's one thing to get a college acceptance and a financial aid package, but for first generation families, um, it's, well, okay, there's this and there's this, but how much are we actually going to pay? What is the bill going to look like? And campuses are not, I would say back then, you don't get a bill until summer.
Right.
And what if it doesn't work out? Like you're
Mm.
either stuck or you're gonna unenroll and change your plans like last minute. And I think I would, maybe I'm making an assumption here, but I think these things are still happening. I think are the colleges getting better in giving you your financial aid package with your admissions? Yes. But I think for some families, they still need the extra, like, okay, well, now I want to know what my bill is going to be. And can I find out now? Because that's going to help make our families make those decisions. Some of our
Mm.
families can't wait until fall semester or for the fall quarter.
Mm.
And so um, I think for me, the conversation was more about how is this actually going to get done? Because as long as they're men, as long as they're my family, my parents have always told me, as long as they're money, um, it can get done. But once the
Mm-hmm.
money runs out, like the money runs out, and when you hear that, you're like, oh shit, I hope that financial aid comes through for the next 4 years
Mm-hmm.
because for my final year of college, like it didn't.
Mm-hmm.
And we had to take out a Parent Plus loan for $7,000 to cover the gap that I had in financial aid, or to cover to take out an extra loan so I can finish the school year, final school year, and still keep the monthly bill like at a reasonable amount.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Um, in reflection of that, Horacio, can you talk to us about your experience with Oxy when you entered college?
Oof. Um. I Again, I think even with Oxy, I've been really lucky. When the week after I graduated from Wilson High School, they have a program called Multicultural Summer Institute,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like a summer bridge program, kind of like EOP here in California at the Cal States. And it's like an extension of Upward Bound. One thing I've heard of at Oxy is like Multicultural Summer Institute is modeled actually after Upward Bound on campus because they call it MSI for short. So MSI, you take classes during the day.
Mm-hmm.
You go to all your meals and stuff like that. You stay in a dorm on campus, and you have evening activities. And you go to tutoring at night. And sometimes you don't have tutoring. You go to a workshop or you meet with your instructors. And just like in Upper Bound, you have homework at night, and you have to finish your homework. And I wanted to be in the writing program, but I guess everybody else wanted to be in the writing program. And so they're like, are you willing to be in the math science class? And I was like, no, like I really didn't want to be honest, because um I wasn't a math and science person. I wanted to focus on my writing because I knew that that's what I felt like I wanted to work on so I could do good in school. But I was like, I want to be in the program regardless. So if I have to do math and science, I'm going to do math and science. And so um, that was a really great Oxy experience for me because um, you're making friends, you're going through the similar experience. Like my math and science class, it was like maybe barely a dozen of us. And
Mm-hmm.
so we all had the same homework, we all had the same assignments, we all met with the same professors, and we were really like tight knit. Like I still connect with some of my MSI cohort, um, even though we've gone off in different fields and things like that. Some of us still stay connected. We crack jokes about the summer program in MSI. Um, and so for me, the benefit was that upon starting fall semester at Oxy my freshman year, I knew all of these people who were in my MSI cohort. So I automatically knew about 40 to 45 other people that we were in this experience together. And, it was a smooth transition to start college, in this new place that was like, okay, like this is a real thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just sitting in an upper bound class anymore. This is a real college class and registering and things like that and meeting with a professor for the first time. Um, I was in economics for business and management major, and so that didn't go well my second semester. I kind of like crashed and burned in that major, and I ended up in academic probation after my fall semester of college. And so on a college cap at Oxy, they give you a year to raise up your GPA before they ask you to leave
Mm-hmm.
to take some academic coursework and do better. Um, and I was like, damn. And so after my freshman year, I changed majors to diplomacy and world affairs.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to get some guidance from the upper bound office on campus because um again it was those other things where like I didn't call home for advice. My source of advice was the upper bound office on campus. And so I let the director know, I let the office know, like, hey, this is what's happening. I remember the director of upper bound, Susan. we went out to lunch. We went off campus to lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember talking to her about like, this isn't working out. This college major is not working out. And she was like, what was your other option? Like, what else were you thinking about? And I was like, well, I was thinking about diplomacy and world affairs because at Oxy, you can study abroad at the United Nations.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that sounds really cool to me. Like, I could eventually go study abroad in the UN. And and it's kind of like politics, but it's the curriculum is a little bit more specific around international relations and those kinds of things. And I was like, cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I changed my major. I had a different advisor. And just naturally, Juan, I could see that I was getting more C pluses and some B minuses as opposed to just like C minuses and C's.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
My writing was horrible. And those of you who like when you go to liberal arts college, of course you're writing a lot. And at Oxy, um, your first year seminar classes, you take one in the fall, one in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
The one in the fall was not good. My papers would come back with like it was like it was like I typed up my papers like on red paper versus white paper. And the professor was giving me like the suggestions, and she was like, eventually she was like, something is up, and not in a bad way. It was more of a concern, and she was like, you know what, like talk to your advisor, make sure you go to the writing center, and take these steps. And I'll never forget her. Her name is Gabrielle Foreman, and she was authentically concerned, and
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's one of the things where I really benefited from going to Oxy is that I would run into professors who were authentically concerned because I think they just wanted me to succeed, or they're like, oh, like I gotta help this dude out. And
Mm-hmm.
so my writing got better because of Professor Foreman's suggestion. I ended up taking an independent study with a writing professor. And
Mm-hmm.
all my independent study was about was every time I had a paper due, I would set up an appointment and he would hash out my papers with me. He wasn't
Okay.
giving me the answers, but he was helping me get started. He was helping me revise. Um, and it was a natural push to connecting me to researchers on campus. Um, I would say the beginning was rough, but and then the rest of it was kind of like an up and down roller coaster. Like I was still progressing, but it was just up and down a little bit.
I see.
But I really vibed with my new advisor from Diplomacy World Affairs. She was really cool. Like, she was, uh, she had like Black Middle Eastern roots, for lack of a better identifier. But she authentically cared. Um, I had her for multiple classes, and so she was my advisor throughout. And I really vibed her. She kept it real with her students about things like Christopher Columbus and colonialism and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she really expressed her thoughts. And I really enjoyed her classes. And I think naturally I still tried to do my own thing, but I was comfortable going to office hours, after my first year because I wasn't really fully taking advantage of office hours. Like sometimes your average trio student who goes off to college, like we struggle with that part because we don't want to call ourselves out in class. We don't want to, embarrass ourselves in front of a professor.
Sure.
But I knew I had to get over it, and you know, either I had to do what I had to do in terms of going to professor's office hours, or eventually the professor was going to call you out because you go to a small college and you can't slip through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I had professors on campus who were like, I would come late to class with one of my professors, and eventually she pulled me aside after class and she was like, don't come to my class late anymore. And from there on, I got the hint. Like, and granted, I was being a hardhead, probably like, I probably was staying out too late the night before and was like, oh, I'll just show up 15 minutes late and I'll get to class when I get to class.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But I think genuinely it was a really great experience because instead of gearing toward like doing the students help or, you know, reaching out to faculty on a regular basis, I really enjoyed the residential community on campus. I lived in a multicultural hall every single year, and it was the same dorm every single year. And so I naturally vibed with everybody in the dorm. I was a kind of a, get along kind of person where like, you know, I'm here and like, let's just be chill, let's just be friends and, go through this experience like together. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's the residential community. That's what got me through. I think Upward Bound in being on campus was definitely a super great resource because it was my job. Like the things that I researched in my capstone project about sense of belonging and community, like I had that before I was able to put words to it.
Mm-hmm.
The sense of connection to Upward Bound, the student community, the being involved on campus, the politics in me came out also because I was on student government
Oh,
when I was an
nice.
Oxy student.
Yeah.
When you're on student government, you can say like how much money clubs and organizations get, the newspaper, the yearbook, and so I definitely found like my place at Oxy as I went along through my years. I still struggled. I was like, oh, I could take this class, like I got this,
Mm-hmm.
and there are some 300 level classes in undergrad where you should not take unless you feel super comfortable.
Right.
But I wanted to take them because it was the professor. And so, did I continue to struggle? Yes. Was I smarter about taking which classes I was taking? It got better.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually, like, yeah, like I made it through. I made it through in 4 years. Because of I think students like me, we need that liberal arts private school kind of education
Absolutely.
where if
Okay.
we were to go to a Cal State or a UC, we would have fallen through the cracks and just been like, oh well, nobody cares. So why should I care or why should I continue on?
Yeah.
You know.
So talk to us about that moment you graduated from college. Were you thinking about your career? Were you thinking about what were you going to do next? Yeah, talk to us a little bit about that.
Mm, I was one of those people that I was not going to the career center. And so I think I started to look at the job market in fall semester of 2022. So I graduated Oxy in 2003. So I started to look into jobs and things like that and barely in fall semester of 2002.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
of course, when you're your senior year, you're thinking about like your capstone project because at Oxy you
Sure.
have to do a capstone project.
Yeah.
And in diplomacy world affairs, your capstone project needed to be at least 50 pages. And I'm like, how the heck am I gonna write 50 pages? Because
Right. That's a lot.
my longest paper was like maybe 15, and that was a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have to write 50 pages with doing the research, like I was a mess. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I was a mess in senior year, but I think I was like, damn, what do I want to do? I was like, do I want to go to the foreign service? Because I would see flyers on campus about, hey, like, get a career in the foreign service. And I even signed up for the foreign service exam. It was
Mm-hmm.
gonna take place at the LA Convention Center, but I didn't go. Like something either it was one of the situations where either I was up late at night and I wasn't feeling it the next day, and I would rather find a job after college or something different.
Mm-hmm.
I never studied abroad at Oxy, and so because of my grades, I was like, they're not gonna accept or give somebody a study abroad experience who doesn't have the GPA or just to put it out there, like my GPA was barely like 2.5. And I was like, they're not gonna accept me, so why even apply?
Mm-hmm.
But I started naturally doing job research all on my own, and I found this organization through AmeriCorps. There were several organizations through the AmeriCorps database that you could like naturally apply for.
Mm-hmm.
There was some in Washington State, like not in Seattle though. It was like the suburbs of Seattle,
Mm-hmm.
like in Yakima or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, "Oh, well, this is the pay, and we're sending you the information for like Medi-Cal and food stamps because we know this isn't enough." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I want to do this."
Mm.
And thankfully, I found an AmeriCorps program in the Bay Area called Partners in School Innovation, and it was in education. So I was like, "Yes, it sounds really great." I made it through a couple of interviews, and they offered me a position. And all of our positions were called partners. And so our role in the elementary schools was to help with their English language arts and math scores.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would provide support through for the school. We would kind of like build and moderate like a lab classroom. And in the lab classroom, there was one teacher who was going to model a lesson, and we would help take notes to see how the students were reacting. What like were the students having positive reactions or negative reactions to the lesson? And sometimes the teachers from the same grade level will also see the lesson demonstration.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything was done to be part of the community, to assist in any way with English and math scores. And my location was in San Jose, although the headquarters was in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
My school was in downtown San Jose. I lived in downtown San Jose by San Jose State University, so there was always something happening in the neighborhood. Because in San Jose State, if the students live in the dorms, they live in the neighborhood and like blocks away from the neighborhood, so you know who the college students are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it was a good experience because it was education, it was helping working in public schools. We would get professional development on a Friday, and so either it was in San Francisco regularly, or eventually they would have them in San Jose. And
Mm-hmm.
so once in a while, I would get to take the Caltrain up to San Jose, from San Jose to San Francisco, and the Caltrain is like the Amtrak, but it's the Bay Area's version of commuter rail.
Mm.
And so the Caltrain would take like an hour for you to get there. But it was sometimes better than carpooling with your coworkers because there was always traffic heading up to San Francisco and
Oh
back.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, but it was good. Once I started with San Jose or with this AmeriCorps program, I was like, there's something good here. I'm also going to get an education award for my service in AmeriCorps. And so when you work for AmeriCorps full time and you meet when you meet the minimum number of hours, you get an education award. It's worth around $4,500 a year,
Oh
and
wow.
you get 2 years. And if you for every year that you do, you can only get up to two education awards at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was like, well, I'm going to get paid. I'm going to get some experience, and I'm going to get this education award. And so, I finished my time with AmeriCorps, and I got my education award, and I used that to pay off my loans.
Wow.
And I was like, damn, I need to get a job now that AmeriCorps is ending. And so I ended up moving up to San Francisco, kind of San Francisco adjacent up to Daly City. And I started working up in the Bay Area in San Francisco after
Mm-hmm.
AmeriCorps.
Wow. How long were you there for in America and with the working with AmeriCorps?
I worked in AmeriCorps from 2003 to 2005. So it was like strictly a 2 year term. Everybody knew it was that. So you knew what you're getting into.
Mm-hmm.
And after AmeriCorps was over in 2005, I started job hunt again. I was like, what am I going to do? Am I going to move back to LA? Am I going to stay up here? I ended up getting a job at Goodwill, like as a store manager.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if people are familiar with San Francisco, back then, there was a Goodwill off of Market Street and Van Ness, by one of the Muni stations. And so it was the biggest Goodwill in the city of San Francisco. So you would have people from the neighborhood come by. You would have people like looking for finds and checking the vintage section because we had a vintage section that was fairly large,
Mm-hmm.
and so that was the more expensive stuff. And it was kind of a model Goodwill store. So they eventually started to sell like electronics there and things like that.
Hmm.
And there was its problems, like, people would try to steal stuff or cause issues and things like that. But that was part of, that was just part of the job and things like that. And then Goodwill was kind of like okay. And then I ended up leaving Goodwill, and I stayed still up in the Bay Area in San Francisco. And I started working at the Macy's in Union Square. And
Hmm.
so, if you've been to San Francisco, Union Square, the Macy's, there was the main building, and across the street there was a men's store of just men's clothing. But I worked in the main building, and I worked third floor, Jones, New York, selling women's clothing.
Hmm.
And at first, it was like, okay, it's a job, and they give me a clothing allowance. But since I'm a male, of course, they're not going to give me the clothes. They give me a clothing. They would give me $150 a month. So the money was intended to, dress professionally, like dress
Hmm.
shoes, kind of
Hmm.
like model what the clothing style is of the brand, but as a guy. So I would always go to work in like slacks and a button-down shirt.
Hmm.
And I thought, cool, I'm getting paid by Macy's, and I'm getting this clothing allowance check from Jones, New York. And the check would literally come from like the corporate company of like the brand. And I liked it because like we had our own little section, and they wouldn't take you away from the section because your job was to sell Jones, New York. And I was good at it. Like, did I want to ask people to open a Macy's card? It was part of the job, but sometimes I would totally gloss over that. And I'm trying to sell the clothes and the brand, and
Right, right.
and when you want to hook up your customers and they're willing to get hooked up, then we're like, let me roll out the red carpet for you and things like that. But it was fun.
Yeah.
Um, I wouldn't see myself selling like convincing ladies to go for the long skirt versus the shorter skirts, or the tailor jackets versus the other style of stuff that we sold. But it was a fun experience. There was also always something going on because the Macy's in San Francisco is technically around 11 floors, but
Hmm.
as a regular customer, you only see like seven. And then
Hmm.
at the very
Hmm.
top, there's a Cheesecake Factory that oversees Union Square.
Wow.
But in between, there's other floors. You just don't see those as customers.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you worked then for your few years. Then it sounds like you working one part private sector and doing that work. You were really good at it. How did you learn about the assistant director position for Trio Upward Bound at your college?
Ooh. So if y'all remember, in about 2008, it was the banking crisis.
I do
And
remember that. Yeah.
so people were people were like, I don't know what's going on. People were being sold these homes they really couldn't afford, or that's what the message was on the news. You know, um, Either people were being promised these mortgage rates or whatever that was happening, and the government ended up bailing out these major banks.
Hmm.
And so the job market was crappy. Um, for me personally, I started to see, I was like, I'm almost 27 now. I don't have money in my savings account. It's expensive to live in San Francisco because I always only rented a room. I never had my own apartment because I wasn't making enough money.
Hmm.
I always had to pay for like the BART or the rapid transit because I couldn't afford to live in San Francisco for just a room.
Hmm.
So I would have to live in Daly City. So if you're familiar with San Francisco, Daly City is adjacent to San Francisco. It's close to San Francisco State, but it's technically Daly City. And so I would have to walk to the BART sometimes. I would have to walk to the train station to get to the BART. And then from there, it was a straight shot into downtown San Francisco. And you would have to
Hmm.
do that twice a day, or because taking the bus was just too long. Um, and I was like, shit, like, you know what? I I have to move back to LA. I have to quit my job here at Macy's. And it sucked leaving Macy's because I think I was really enjoying it. Like
Hmm.
I would have wanted to be a manager there. like being in charge of an entire floor, like helping people, like employees and helping them out, stuff like that. But it just didn't work out. So in 2008, I moved back to LA. I applied for unemployment and I was on unemployment. And because the banking crisis was, because a lot of people were going through it during that time, I don't know if you remember, they kept passing legislation to extend unemployment benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was in unemployment for a good year. And in 2009, the Upper Bound office, Gilbert and Jesse at the time, they were on their lunch break. And I was going to go run an errand. Like either I was going to go to the bank to cash my unemployment check or put it away and go run some errands. And they're like, hey, we think our administrative assistant is going to leave jobs and get another job somewhere. So we're giving you a heads up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wait, what's happening? And I was like, just, we'll let you know exactly if she's leaving. And then we'll let you know when the job posting is going to get sent out. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I really appreciate it. Thank you for letting me know. And so in 2009, they were like, about a few weeks later, it was around March 2009. They're like, hey, our admin is leaving. So, get your resume together. And when you see the job posting come out, or send it to Susan, who was still the director at the time, and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my resume together, and the administrative assistant job at the time at Upper Bound was 25 hours a week. So it was right under the full-time threshold,
Mm-hmm.
but that's how the position was structured. And so I was like, cool, I'm gonna apply for this job. It's a familiar place, familiar people, and I won't have to be on unemployment. Long story short, I submitted my resume. I interviewed with the director, Susan, who knew me since I was a student.
Mm-hmm.
And even before I got home or later that day after the interview, she was like, "Oh, I didn't think you were gonna get like leave right away. I would have told you already that I was gonna hire you."
Oh,
And
wow.
so I get the
Yeah.
email like before 5 o'clock, before the end of the day, saying, "Oh, congratulations. This is what your hourly rate is gonna be." And it's signed by Susan, the director.
Mm-hmm.
And I started off working in Trio as a 25-hour a week part-time admin. I
Mm-hmm.
would start at 8 a.m. and I would go home at 1 p.m. every day. And I didn't have to go to Saturday sessions, or I didn't have to be part of the summer program as much. I
Mm-hmm.
was just doing the office work. But
Mm-hmm.
eventually, I was like, oh, I'm gonna come hang out in the summer, or help out whenever I can. And it wasn't for extra pay. I was just coming to hang out. But if something was happening, obviously I couldn't turn it away.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would have to step in, or and along the way I would get to go to the Dodger game or have lunch on campus and things like that with the students, and I would see what was going on and what it was like for them to live in the dorm professionally and stay overnight and things like that. Um, and as things sometimes go in higher education, people leave and people come and go.
Sure.
And I slowly moved up the ladder. After being an administrative assistant, I became the academic coordinator. Um, for a few years, that was
Mm-hmm.
my first full-time position in Trio. Helping the students with like their education plans and making sure their transcripts are solid, and just providing them general advisement.
Mm-hmm.
And then I moved up to the assistant director, and now after I got my master's degree, I'm now the
Wow.
associate director. So
Wow. So associate director.
yes.
So that again, full circle moment for you. How are you feeling with that? Like the very program that served you as a student, and now you're serving it as its associate director.
hmm Yeah, I mean it's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean it's crazy and it's fun. When my director Waldo is out and there's things going on campus, like I'll fill in for him. Like if it's a lunch meeting that we need to be involved in
Mm-hmm.
and he can't make it, then I help fill in.
Mm-hmm.
And I definitely don't mind that because it's like there are these meetings with like professors and other people who are engaging with the LA community. And some of these people happen to be professors that I used to have a class with them. And so sometimes those spaces are intimidating, but not anymore. But they used to be because, like, I would see one of my politics professors that I had for two classes. And when I first started interacting with her, I would be like, Professor Freer, I was always be like, Professor so and so, Professor this,
With
Professor
the formal
that.
titles, yeah.
Yeah, until they tell me, like, until one time Professor Freer was like, don't call me like Professor Freer, call me Regina. And every time I see her on campus or we're at the same meeting or whatever it is, I'm like, hey Regina, how's it going? And in my mind, like I'm just like, don't say anything embarrassing. Uh, but people like Regina and other professors on campus, like they keep it real.
Mhm.
They're doing amazing work, just like we're doing amazing work. And it's crazy. Like I don't like to try to sugarcoat my experiences because that has always been perfect. No.
Mhm.
Working in trio, there's always going to be threats from the inside and the outside.
Mhm.
I think that, back in I remember going to my first policy seminar with COE in 2011,
Mhm.
and it was the time around the government shutdowns were happening more frequent.
Oh
The
yeah, that's
Tea
right. Yeah.
Party was like, throwing shade to Obama every chance they got, and they were threatening to shut down the government. And that, I don't know, that got me like really, it just got me like really upset and really miffed because, with COE for the first time, at least for me, I learned that there's Republicans who are big allies of Trio.
Yeah.
And it doesn't connect with you until you actually see and hear for yourself.
Right.
And so it really bothered me when, like, why don't these people believe in Trio? Why would these people want to take money away from Trio? My colleagues would tell me back in 2000, in the early 2000s, or President Bush zero line Trio one year, and people went ballistic on him.
Mhm.
And there's power behind this advocacy that we all have working in a place like Trio. And so it's it's I think there's so many more positives than negatives working in Trio. Like I always
Mhm.
like to see the glass half full because you know what, if there's something that we can get because our funds are what our funds are, but you have colleagues on campus who are willing to help you out. They're willing to do a workshop for you. They're willing to go the mile for you because they've been on campus for so long and they know Upward Bound.
Absolutely.
They may not be involved in Upward Bound every semester or every single year, but they care and they want to see us succeed. Just like, if my colleagues have an initiative on campus, or if it's something around first gen Latinos or first gen students of color, like I'm gonna try to support that because that is the same population that TRIO is serving. And sometimes we can they can help us be successful, but
Mhm.
as much as our college can help TRIO programs be successful, TRIO can make our colleges and universities look amazing and be successful because at Oxy Upper Bound, like we're known for the people that we have the connection to government.
Mhm.
And there's only certain places on campus that can say that. And we're one of them. So as the associate director, like I feel very proud of like the work we've done because when our congressman sees an email or when we make a phone call to our congressman, like they're paying attention to what we're saying.
Mhm.
And there's not a lot of places at Oxy that could say that.
Absolutely. Can you talk to us about your mentors throughout college and your current career? Who are those people that helped with your
Ooh.
professional growth?
Mm, I mean, I would say other than Susan Gilbert, are also one of my best friends, Jesse, who they told me about the Albert Bell job. I would say one of them would have to be Hector Perez. Hector is also an Albert Brown alumni from Oxy. He went to Oxy as well, and so when it was my first year at Oxy, he was a senior at Oxy, and so we never had classes together, but we would cross paths. He would invite me to his off-campus parties once in a while, because he lived off campus right down the street from Oxy. And so super familiar face because he was a staff member. Around the time that Ms. Medina was a staff member too at Oxy as an RA, he was an RA too.
Wow.
And so, when I worked for the Upper Bound program on summer residential staff, he was the head RA. So he was in charge of all of the RAs and the tutors. He was between Susan and Gilbert, I would say, because we were both Oxy students for a year together, he was the one that was more comfortable with, because, he was doing his own thing too during his final year of college, but I was trying to get my feet wet and grounded too. So it was like, again, that natural resource where I could step into the Upper Bound office, and then Susan or Gilbert went around, then we could just straight talk about how school going, and I could share a certain experience with him that I would feel uncomfortable talking to Susan and Gilbert about. I want to say he probably knew that I was on academic probation because I told him, or I just shared with the office. I really appreciate Hector because, I see what he's doing in the community. When he was an Oxy student, and I see what he's doing now as a teacher at Arleta High School and making an impact on his students. And so I definitely see him like as a mentor. When I had to move to the Bay Area, to San Jose for my AmeriCorps job, he actually drove me up there to San Jose.
Wow. Yeah.
I packed up my stuff in his car. He had family living in San Jose. So for him, it was like, well, I'm going to help out Horacio move up and take him to his new place that he's going to be staying at. But I'm also going to visit with my family and things like that. So, before he left, him and his family ended up having like a barbecue at a park nearby. So like I don't know. I remember going to his family's house in the south side of San Jose. I remember hanging out with them and things like that. So, and Mr. Perez worked in Trio as a professional. And so he also had it as his campus job, but he was also, I'm pretty sure he was able to go to West Side conferences and be part of COE and things like that. Like, I remember him, he would fax letters to the congressional offices to make appointments or fill out forms and things like that. And I got to go to COE when I was an Oxy student. And so it was part of we took a few Upper Bound students with us, and we got to check out different colleges, universities, while the assistant director at the time was going to the COE conference. And so Mr. Perez, or Hector, and me and the Upper Bound students, we were all going, walking around DC. We were checking out the museums, checking out the campuses. And then, of course, there was the Walking the Hill Day. And to me, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Because it never clicked in my mind that I was going to be walking the halls of Congress and meeting with, I still remember sitting in the office where it was us, Oxy Upper Bound, and it was another trio group there. And we all had a meeting with Congresswoman Hilda Solis, who used to be President Obama's Secretary of Labor when he was the president. And now Hilda Solis is the county supervisor for the 1st District of Los Angeles currently. And so it's a trip to me to, have that experience with Mr. Perez as my mentor, and him having the connection with the schools, and just, I think naturally there's a genuine deep connection there, with some of my friends from even Upper Bound too, that, we still keep in touch with staff. We see each other on a regular basis when we were both RAs. And so I would say for sure, Mr. Perez, who used to be, again, a former participant himself, he was an Oxy alumni. We see each other sometimes at the reunion events, or we stay in contact still. But yeah, if I had to, I would say definitely Hector Perez.
Wonderful. What advice do you have for TRIO participants at all levels, whether they're educational opportunity centers, Upward Bound, student support services, McNair, any one of those?
Ooh. I mean, the easy thing would be don't do what I did in college, but but I would say from my perspective, this because we do work at a small campus, I would say dip into everything that you can. Like you don't have to do everything, but do the things that naturally gravitate towards you. Like if it's going to a club meeting regarding your ethnicity or your race or your sexuality or your religion, like do that stuff.
Hmm.
Be part of clubs that are relate to your beliefs and your values. Like I tell the upper belt students, if there's something on your campus or in your college or whatever it is that doesn't exist and you feel that it should, then start it.
That's
Especially if,
absolutely true.
it doesn't matter if you're a pre-college trio participant or a college student.
Hmm.
Like if you feel that there should be a food pantry, for example, at your high school, then start one. Like, ask your trio advisors for some advice because they probably know somebody at the high school who could help you out and get that started as opposed to struggling. And usually students these days are like, well, if it's too hard, then I'm over it.
Right.
But I think your trio counselor can be the perfect person to reach out to be like the facilitator of something.
Hmm.
And then I think especially if you're a trio college student, you should definitely be empowered to go to your student life office and say, hey, I'm a first generation student, but where is the first generation programming on campus? Where is the first generation club here on campus? Especially if you have a strong population of X, Y, and Z, then
Hmm.
there should never be an excuse from your campus about something not existing for students.
Hmm.
So whether, if it's a black alumni, if it's a black program or a Latino program, an Asian program, or first gen or low income stuff, like if that's what you identify, then make way for those programs. And not unfortunately, but unfortunately, sometimes it has to fall on trio students or on college students or on high school students, or if you have to be the first person to speak up. And I think that's sometimes the hardest part for our students. It's
Absolutely.
like this book that I'm reading right now, part of COE's book club, the first gen memoir by Alejandra Campoverde. In her book, she talks about being the first and only. And I think as first generation students in trio, the first and only thing is never going to go away. Like I'm
Mm,
starting to realize
mm,
that from her
mhm.
book. And so as a high school student, or if you're a college student or in an EOC program or wherever you're at in trio, sometimes you have to be the first and only person to speak up in a room or meet with the dean of students office or like ruffle some feathers on campus to get something done. Because sometimes if you're not being loud enough, people are not going to hear you on campus. And you
So
don't have to be
true.
super loud if you're not that kind of person, but there's other ways to get something started. Like, I'm really happy to hear that at Oxy, there's two students who started a first generation low income club. And I think that's great because, we pay attention to first gen sometimes or not. But we also don't pay attention to students who qualify for federal Pell Grants
Hmm.
because those are truly the low income students. Because if you qualify for Pell, then you're at a certain threshold that is no way equal to some of your more affluent students on campus. So I always encourage TRIO students like, yo, give it a shot. If you get stuck, go to your TRIO counselor and ask them for advice. Like don't be afraid to say like, how do I do this or how can I start this?
Right now. That's a very good piece of advice. Do you want to take a moment right now in the podcast to acknowledge or do shout outs to folks that have really helped you along the way?
Um, I mean, shout out to the Oxy Upperbound office as usual. Susie, Gilbert, Jesse, Mr. Perez, just everybody. Jesus, even though he recently left us as director, he's working up at Sonoma. Like all of these folks have allowed the program to transcend. Um, I think I get emotional about it because, like, if it weren't for these folks who are the director or like the light staff um, you know, advocating for campus resources, advocating for the federal government. Like, it just doesn't magically happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
Mm-hmm.
enjoy being on the office end of it. Um, but I just want to shout out everybody who has come through the Oxy Bound office since the beginning of 1965. We have people at Oxy who they were Oxy students in the 1960s, and they were part of the counseling team when Oxy Upward Bound first started on campus. And they still come back to Upward Bound or Oxy and say, "Hey, how is the program doing? Or what are y'all up to these days?" and things like that. And it's so cool to hear that because these people who were Oxy alumni in the 1960s, some of them are board of trustee members. Some of them have the ear of the president or a very influential people on campus. And it's so cool to have that um, as an upper bound program. And it's helpful because
Absolutely.
that way, as current staff, you don't have to. I guess we're very blessed because sometimes you don't have to try as hard. Sometimes you do, and that's okay because you learn from it. But I think we're so blessed and lucky at Oxy Upward Bound, and I'm so excited to whether I continue on in these next few years or I find a director position out there, like
Mm-hmm.
I'll always be from Oxy Upper Bound. Yeah.
Awesome.
And
What?
shout out to Wally, Sochi, Brando, Angela, Michelle. Michelle recently joined us. She's from PTC Upper Bound, or I may have gotten that wrong. I think she's from Cal State LA Upper Bound, but she went to high school in Pasadena, and
Mm-hmm.
she's one of our true alumni working in the office, and she's currently in grad school. And I have to shout out to her because that definitely resonates with me. And also Alondra, one of our Oxy students working for us in the program as well right now.
Wonderful. What advice would you give to new and current trio professionals? If you had the ear of every trio professional currently across this country and its territories, what would you say to them?
Oh,
Sorry to put you on the spot like that, Horacio.
no, I mean, I would say like y'all, if you're new, if you're like, is this the right place for me?
Mm,
Or whatever questions you may be asking yourself, not to be cheesy and corny, but I think sometimes in trio, like maybe there's a layer. I don't know how people are gonna think about this, but I think there's a layer of imposter syndrome within trio when you first start off
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
because you're like, no matter where you were at before you started working in trio, if you're a current grad student or you just finished your undergraduate program, or if you're dipping into trio for the first time, I think you have to give yourself some time and figure out your niche. You have to figure out, okay, this is my role, this is my job, but how can I make it fun and exciting?
mm-hmm.
What are my own personal niches, or what am I passionate about? And how can you intertwine that into your own trio program? And so
Absolutely.
I'm, you know, some of my upbringing is politics. I like to stay in tune with politics. I like to encourage my students to advocate. So sometimes those are the workshops that I like to present to the students. That's the spin that I like to have in the conversations when I have something to say to our trio participants. So bring your own personal story, but do it in your own way. Like, you don't have to tell the students all of your business
Mm-hmm.
or all of your secondary dimensions of identities and things like that. Like, do it on your own time and do it when it's relevant to the situation.
Certainly.
And that way the students know that you're just like them. You're not the when it comes down to having a real talk moment with your students. When you have the genuine connection, they're not going to see you as the associate director, or they're not going to see you as the director. They're going to see you as Horacio, and they're going to know that he's letting me know like the truth, as
Yeah.
opposed to this constructed, fabricated, kind of like sugar-coated version of a particular story. And be honest and comfortable with be honest with your students to your comfort level. Um, And it's okay to randomly like Google us, like I've never done this before, but it's okay to Google trio colleagues across the country and reach out to them and say, hey, like, I'm stuck on this, or, a lot of us put questions out to the trio listener, but I think that's the easiest way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
We've had programs like, we've had some of our fellow colleagues from Hawaii tell us, hey, we're going to be in the LA area. Can you stop by the Upper Bound office at Oxy and come have a chat with y'all about your summer program and what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, as a new trio professional, if, you know, um, yes, there's websites and places we can check out, but um, I don't mind that people will email me or, give us a call in the office and say, hey, like, could I have like half an hour of your time? And, how do you set up your academic year? Or, if you get stuck at your high schools or your partnerships with campus, like, how do you manage this?
Yeah.
Because, um, yes, I like to keep certain things a secret or the way we do things ourselves, but I think it's important that we share and maybe not let people come to the conclusion or regret being in trio because I think trio is such an amazing, cool thing.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
but you make trio what you put into it. Personalize it. It doesn't have to be this super structured like permissible services and non-permissible services. Like I encourage people out there to be creative and see what other programs are doing.
Absolutely. Do you think doctoral program is in your future?
I haven't gotten the grad school bill yet. To be honest, I
Okay.
I fully funded my grad school experience through loans, and so
Wow.
you know, and I'm still wondering if my undergrad loans. I mean, I'm practically done paying my undergrad loans, but with all this loan forgiveness, um, I don't know. I'll be
Okay.
shocked if I actually get like money back or whatever is gonna happen. But that's funny you asked that, Juan, because my capstone advisor, so at the University of Laverne, you leading up to graduation or the end of your program, you have to take organizational research one and then your senior seminar.
Mm-hmm.
So in organizational one, you're starting your first three chapters of your capstone project. And then in senior seminar, you finish, or your graduate seminar, you complete chapters 4 and 5. So it's like a continuous process.
Right.
And I remember like in organizational research, um, I finished everything. All I had to do was make the final edits through the feedback of the professor and just
Mm-hmm.
resubmit the same paper.
Right.
And it
Right.
was for 5 points. It was like the same, it was like an assignment, but I was like, cool, I'll get it done later in the week. And earlier in the week on Mondays, every Monday she would have open office hours via Zoom. And somebody went ahead of me with questions, and I was the only other person who was there for office hours. So we literally had, I'm not lying, y'all, like we talked for over an hour on Zoom.
Whoa.
It was vulnerable. I was crying. She was giving me feedback, like the affirmations I didn't know I needed to hear. Because she was like, your capstone project is really amazing. Granted, it wasn't done, but she was feeling the topic. I think she was naturally feeling what I was trying to do,
Mm-hmm.
and she was gonna make sure that I was. She was gonna make sure that I was being accountable. She didn't play. She didn't like play around. Play around.
Mm-hmm.
And she was serious. But I was feeling that, and so she's like, you know what? If you were to apply to jobs, in the DC area, because I was telling her naturally, if I wasn't working in Trio, my ideal job would be to advocate all day on Capitol Hill for COE
Mm-hmm.
or being an advocate at a think tank in Washington, DC around Latinos and first generation people. And since my capstone project was around the Latinos in higher education, she was like, you know what? If you applied to jobs right now, or if you applied to a job and I was running a think tank, I would hire you because, you're, naturally I'm first generation, I'm Latino, and we need more people like you. And what she was getting at was University of Laverne, like some of our colleges in California, is a Hispanic serving institution.
Mm-hmm.
But she was sharing to me that, a lot of the faculty at Laverne are not Latino. And so she was like, if you're not trying to be a professor, then I
Mm-hmm.
would recommend to you that you go into an EDD program. If you want to stay away from teaching or just being a professor.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wow, like nobody's ever told me that. I'm very thankful for you giving me the feedback. So if it's not a PhD program, I would maybe do an EDD program because I don't know if I want to teach. Like, there's always that lingering question where I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, one of my classmates at Oxy, she's a professor on campus. And so if I did want to do a PhD program, I could rely on her and other faculty on campus to say like, hey, what would this look like? But I wouldn't mind looking into an EDD program because I feel like it would allow it would open up maybe the floodgates to opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
But I still want to do stuff around higher education, college completion.
Yeah.
When I was part of the COE Leadership Institute at Yale in 2019,
Mm-hmm.
there was this lady, I forget her name, but she's really petite. And I think the story is she used to work in the Bill Clinton administration, but I forget like where.
Mm-hmm.
And in this presentation, we actually all got to see like what does the different college completion levels look like across all of the United States. And the numbers aren't good in general, but when you start to break it down, especially for Latinos and African Americans, it's horrible.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, I think something clicked in my mind about with that moment and doing my capstone project. I was like, this really needs to change because you know what? Apparently in 2030, there's going to be a labor crisis that not everybody's talking about. And I learned
Mm-hmm.
this through one of my management courses in my program. There's a podcast of a mister that says that with AI coming around and the educational attainment in the United States and migration and, having to get people from certain countries outside of the United States to fill in technology jobs in other areas, that there's a labor crisis that's coming. And what better way to get ahead of this labor crisis if more people of color were educated in the United States. And I'm not just talking about four-year education. The numbers for, graduate programs is very like low. But I think we need to start off with making sure that if it's not a four-year program, if it's not an undergraduate program, there's our community colleges are so um not so spoken of. And so we need to pay attention to our community colleges are also playing a role in the higher education of our students and for a lot of our families. And
Mm-hmm.
so if I could help in that realm, I think eventually I would say more in an EDD program because I want to be that voice who sometimes frankly it's not a person of color or it's not a first generation person who's at the main table who is making decisions and not taking into account trio folks
Right.
or the population that we serve.
Absolutely. What are some books, TV shows, either that you're streaming or binging, or podcasts that you're keeping up with?
Well, first and foremost, I haven't listened to it yet, but the Let's Talk Trio podcast with Juan Rivas, I heard it's super lit.
Thank you. I
I
appreciate
I
that.
honestly, y'all, I'm gonna be completely transparent. I don't have a podcast thing on my phone. I know on iPhones it has like a podcast thing,
Mhm.
but I honestly don't listen to podcasts. But this is very fun and interactive. Like I'm really vibing this.
Good, good,
Um,
good.
I normally don't read books. Oh, I was reading in grad school a lot, but I'm currently reading, going back to COE's book club that they're promoting currently right now. I am reading First Gen, a memoir by Alejandra Campoverdi. I've been to her in-person appearances here at the City Library here in LA, and it was such a moving experience to be in front of her and hearing her first generation story growing up in LA and going to USC and then to Harvard. And then from Harvard going to the White House and working for President Obama.
Wow.
And at the public thing, I ended up running into Mike Lopez. He's the trio director for Upward Bound at Los Angeles City College. So it was like, oh, cool. I'm glad that I came because like, I know who you are. And like, it was just, we were in a room with other first generation people, like scared, vulnerable, like sharing your story. So I'm reading her book currently right now. Otherwise, y'all, I don't read books. I like to get my information from the internet or what people are sharing with me. I don't stream. I honestly don't have I have my free MLS subscription because of Apple TV.
Oh, okay.
And so whenever the games are, I'm like, oh, soccer's on, like let me see what's going on. I root for the LA Galaxy and not the LAF, not the
the LAFC, right?
Is it LAFC? Is that
one of my very close friends, Jose? Shout out to Jose. He's an LAFC fan. I've been a Galaxy fan for forever.
Oh, and the tickets are expensive, y'all. At
I hear that. Oh yeah.
So, Galaxy games are more trio budget friendly, but and it's fun. I like going down to soccer games in general are cool. But honestly, y'all, I'm not a streaming person. My go-to shows during the week are Golden Girls on the Hallmark Channel from 7 to 10 here on the West Coast. There's nothing better for me to just be at home, like I said, and just do nothing and sit for 3 hours or change the channel here and there and watch Golden Girls because I think it's still relevant. You know, to this day, there's this episode where they get all nervous because the first President Bush is coming to visit them at their house. And just all of the jokes that they say is like, it's such a classic. My other go-to show is Married with Children. I think it's the first show growing up that as a kid in the way that I grew up really resonated with me. Like Al who worked in the shoe store and the wife who didn't do anything but spend his money. Their humble beginnings. It was just like, at the time, I always grew up watching The Cosby Show and the spinoff of A Different World and, A Living Color and things like that. And there's just something about Married with Children that I think if you grew up low income, you understood it.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. There's something that resonated there. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't stream, y'all. I may sign up for Amazon Prime so I can watch the Jose Hernandez watch party this week for Trio. But I'm anti Amazon kind of. So I may end up buying or borrowing my coworker's Amazon account. Or
there
just,
you go. That's one way to
bite
do
it in the bullet and just sign up for a free trial.
Certainly. Horacio, what is one word you would use to describe yourself? Only one word.
Oh my God, only one word. Shoot. Was this one of the questions you sent? No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
I obviously misglossed that one over. I'm going to use a word that we say in the trio world, and I'm going to say persistent.
Persistent. I love that. So that's going to be the title of your podcast. We're going to use that as a title.
Yeah. The other title of my podcast, I was playing around with my coworker, Wally. I secretly want to do a podcast called La Neta because I saw the phrasing on Instagram, and in English, La Neta translates to the truth. And so I was like, oh, fun joke. Like, I want to do a podcast called La Neta, and we would just talk about the truth around certain issues and things like that. But
yeah,
the persistent podcast would work for me, Juan.
That's going to definitely be the title of this episode. So I love that. Wonderful.
Yes.
Wonderful. Horacio, it has been a true pleasure speaking with you this afternoon. So it would be morning still over there in California, or because it's afternoon for me, I think.
Oh, it's 12:30 here, so it's definitely afternoon for us.
Okay. So I thank you again for sharing your trio journey with us. I hope to have you on again. That would be wonderful to have you on again.
Oh, yes, Juan, I would love it. If you want to do a shorter version of the podcast, I can get more people from the Upper Bound team to,
Hey, that would be wonderful.
Do a 2-for-1. I'll definitely share with my team that I was on your podcast, and I'm definitely looking forward to bringing more people from West Stock.
That would be great
to be part of your podcast. So I'm glad that y'all have this platform. I wish that it continues to be a success. So I'm really proud of y'all too.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So Horacio, we have a tradition on the Let's Talk Trio podcast where we have the guests sign off. Do you care to do the honors?
Yes, Juan, I definitely will. This is Horacio Aceves, and I am a trio alum of the Upper Bound program from Occidental College, and I currently serve as the Associate Director for Upper Bound here at Oxy. I'm here to remind Trio Nation to contact your elected officials on the national, state, and local level and let them know about the impact you're having on first-generation students and students from underrepresented groups. Here's to an amazing National First Generation Day celebration in November, and always remember, Trio works.
Are you a participant, alum, or staff of a TRIO program? Do you want your program highlighted? You or your program could be featured in an upcoming episode of Let's Talk TRIO. Get a hold of us by going to our Facebook page or Instagram and send us a direct message. Search for Let's Talk TRIO. We want to get your story to the public.
That was our guest, Horacio Aceves, from the Trio Upward Bound program at Occidental College. Horacio, thank you so much for being on the podcast and for sharing your trio journey. Remember, if you would like to be on the Let's Talk Trio podcast or know a staff, advocate, participant, or alumni, send us an email at letstalktrio@gmail.com. That email again is letstalktrio@gmail.com. A huge thanks to our sponsors, Angelica Villalpando, Dr. Jamie Motley, Dr. Ryan Barone, Angelica Valdez, Felicia Rivera, Rosario Riley, TrioJoblist.com, NOSOTROS Education Center, Jaded Electronics, and Student Access. Thank you all so much for your continued support of this podcast. You too can be a sponsor of Let's Talk Trio podcast in one of three ways. Become a monthly patron on Patreon. Our base patron level starts at $1 a month. If you own a business and would like to sponsor the podcast, send us an email so we can give you sponsorship packages. Become a supporter with a one-time donation to the podcast PayPal account. Our handle is @Let'sTalkTrio. That handle one more time is @Let'sTalkTrio. I'd like to take a moment to thank our honorary members of the Let's Talk Trio podcast, Roderick Chambers, Tony Ho, Scott Kendall, and Susan Cramp. The Let's Talk Trio podcast team is John Russell, audio engineer, music producer and composer, and post-production editor. Amelia Castañeda, script supervisor, marketing manager, social media manager, and producer. Juan Rivas, executive producer and host. This episode was recorded Sunday, October 22nd, 2023. Always be sure to exercise your right to vote. Thank you all so much for listening, and we will catch you on the next episode.